Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and enjoy this fanfic part 2. Now let's start the fanfic. Murmurs and whispers escaped along with applause as to what happened earlier. To many, the impossible just happened. The previous year's top rookie, a Hyuga no less, was beaten in a fight by the current year's dead last. It couldn't get any more surprising than that. And the underdog didn't just win it with some lucky shot. He straight up matched the Hyuga blow for blow and fought the match to the bitter end. It was surprising to see, though, that throughout their match, the countless Junin and some Chunin that were watching the match somehow knew that Naruto, the moment he had Neji attacking him, was the one that got the advantage early on. The Uzumaki used the good old bait and wait, huh? Kotetsu muttered while he looked at Izumo, who was looking at the candidate intently. The bait being, himself, throwing weapons and keeping his distance while Neji attacked. Though the tactic itself isn't as important as the one that soon followed, OR was conveniently hidden underneath an obvious strategic choice yet useless since Naruto didn't have any long-range jutsu. It served its purpose by luring Neji within the field of his messy but actually coherent formation that even they actually paid no mind until Neji couldn't connect. A double subversion, actually, it was what that strange, completely messy formation that made Neji underestimate his opponent but not notice that he was in perfect range of each and every single one of his clones. Neji was actually zoned and guarded by several clones at once and he didn't notice it, preferring to attack the now obvious bait. Kotetsu whistled at this. That's a point for Naruto-san right there. Let's not forget how he managed to handle Kaden and that last-ditch move. Izumo nodded. Skill-wise and physical-wise, Naruto was at a disadvantage. Neji had more skill in taijutsu, had more brute strength and reach due to his height advantage and speed thanks to Guy's training methods. But then those attributes failed to bring Neji the win when Naruto pulled out all of the stops by changing tactic after tactic in their exchange and giving Neji an illusion that he was still going to win. Genjutsu in a reality, this kid will go far, Kotetsu. He's going to be recommended for promotions even if we don't submit our forms. But is it wise to give Naruto the rank, though? Keep in mind his position as the container. Kotetsu was referring to the advisors and some of the ninja that were against such a motion, but Izumo knew that this was going to be a no-brainer. Container or no, the ability he displayed earlier is an indispensable trait that Chunin should have. More missions will probably go smoothly with him in the roster. The other examiners would probably think of this as well. As Kiba saw Naruto go up to the waiting lounge as the victor of the match, he couldn't help but feel a fire igniting inside of him as he gritted his teeth. Damn that blonde for making him pumped as of this match. Seeing that Naruto actually put up a fight and won against Neji, I feel like I'd like to train some more. Hinata simply gave a wordless nod. Knowing that Naruto had given her a fist earlier and uttered that win for her, she was flattered but happy for the blonde nonetheless. In another part of the stands, Guy was finally able to sit down. He felt his legs were getting a little soft so he needed to lie down for a moment. An unbelievable display, was all he could say as the two girls in front of the teacher nodded as well. To think that he was able to beat Neji like that, Ino muttered before she continued, this time looking at Sakura. The pink-haired girl could only watch, a bittersweet smile etched on her face. When had she realized it? Throughout the month that she hadn't seen hide nor hair of her two teammates, she had nothing better to do than to visit the friends she had in the hospital. While it was well and good and she even gave Lee flowers as a get-well present, in the time that the elimination matches took place to the time that the finals had begun, her mind was literally on things other than training. When she saw Naruto's sudden spike in improvement, she couldn't help but feel left out. An image of Naruto and Sasuke walking further and further away from her appeared in her mind. Their backs turned against her, and none of them were telling her to catch up. When Naruto had made it into the waiting lounge, he was greeted with the lazy, beady-looking eyes of Shikamaru while the sand girl went past him without giving him any forethought. Shikamaru looked at him and asked the blonde, "You're still going to fight after having 32 of your tenketsu sealed like that?" Naruto merely grinned at him. "Don't worry about me, I've got something to counter that too in case my fight comes a little earlier. You should be concerned about your match. I heard the proctor earlier bumping Sasuke's match a little later, and it seems they want to see what the Tem's capable of." Shikamaru whistled as he commented, "Damn, you really did come here prepared for your fight. I wish I didn't have to do this, though. Though Ino would have my hide if I just disappear now like what Sasuke is probably doing." Naruto laughed at Shikamaru's statement and said, "Sasuke wouldn't miss this for the world, Shikamaru." The blonde's expression turned to caution as he caught sight of the redhead that was silently staring down at the field. "Now get going and kick some, I need some shut-eye. I haven't slept since last night. It's only natural for someone like you to have no sleep since last night." Gaara commented as he turned to Naruto. "On nights of the full moon, people like us who have monsters inside tend to become restless." Kankuro, the one who was wearing black, inched a little further away when Gaara spoke. He could hear the sand churning inside the redhead's gourd, itching to have a fight today. Naruto patted Shikamaru on the back to tell him he should get going while the blonde kept staring at Gaara. "Fortunate for you, that your beast lets you sleep at night, unlike mine. Hold on to your panties a little longer, your match is coming. You don't need me to satisfy your bloodlust right now." Naruto said this as he sat beside Shino while leaning against the wall. "Is it appropriate for you to sleep right now, Naruto-san? Cheering for our classmate should be common courtesy." Shino asked the blonde who waved it off. Naruto simply yawned and slowly closed his eyes. "That lazy bastard doesn't need it. He knows what to do." With that, Naruto promptly dozed off. Naruto awoke when he could feel someone shaking him slowly from his slumber. Annoyed, Naruto was about to tell the person to off and let him have his sleep when Shino had spoken to him. "Konoha is being invaded. Sasuke-san and Gaara-san's battle has abruptly stopped." Too drowsy or too surprised by this sudden information, Naruto shouted at the bug user, "What?" Shino was about to repeat himself when Naruto had made a dash to the railings and saw the sand siblings take away Gaara from the arena below and a sand shinobi facing the proctor of the current exams. Gritting his teeth, Naruto quickly left the waiting area and proceeded to head towards the bleachers, not noticing his male teammate chasing after the said siblings with Shino following suit with the blonde. "Well, this is the last time I'll be taking naps from here on out." When he was about to go outside, he stopped when two ninja were clashing just above the seats of the unconscious audience with the Hokage's area suddenly enclosed in some sort of barrier. What on earth is going on? Naruto had to ask himself as he went for cover when he saw two ninjas with sound headbands falling dead on the ground. A Konoha Junin with glasses perched on one of the back chairs noticed the blonde that was looking utterly confused at the whole situation. "Ah, Naruto-kun, there you are. Have you recovered from your fight with Neji?" the man with the shades asked and Naruto nodded. Aoba then jumped from his position and took out a sand shinobi with his kunai stuck into the man's back, his flak vest rendered useless from that stab. "Good. I don't have time to explain all the details, but you're a newly minted Chunin now. Go take a team with you, preferably 4 and rendezvous with Kakashi's newly formed team. They're after that Gaara kid. I don't know what they're planning, but you need to go out there and provide backup. There's 2 genin there by the side, down the lower boxes, an Inuzuka and a Hyuga. Take them and the one behind you to act as your teammates. Go now." Another ninja dared to clash with Aoba once more as said Junin gladly accepted the man's challenge. It would be prudent to do as he says, Naruto-san. That Gaara fellow tells me that he can do more with that sand of his as to what we've seen so far. Naruto nodded his head and crawled down to the lower boxes, struggling to make his way to the familiar faces of Kiba and Hinata. When the blonde had reached their seats, Naruto suddenly had to face-palm himself. Ah, great, I forgot, I don't know how to dispel genjutsu. Allow me, Naruto-san. Shino intervened, and with a hand seal and a mutter of, Kai, he tapped Kiba's shoulders but not Hinata's. What's the hold up with Hinata? Naruto asked his partner for the day. Do not forget that Hinata-san still hasn't recovered from her injury fully, and my Kikaichu sense that the genjutsu placed on her did not work. Most likely she wants to lay low and not cause any problems. I suggest we take her to a safe location before any of the opposing shinobi take interest in a Hyuga and abduct her. Wouldn't you think so, Hinata-san? Naruto seemed agreeable to this, and so, looked at Hinata expectantly, who by now was bowing her head but wide awake, worried for her health. He knew many people weren't as durable as him, which was why he was concerned. Shino. What happened? Kiba asked, and Shino explained the situation to him while Naruto asked the Hyuga. Hinata, are you alright? Don't push yourself. It's going to be a dangerous mission from here on out. If you haven't recovered yet, then the three of us will do. Hinata shook her head, and no, take me with you, I want to be of some help with this. The three males looked at each other and then nodded. Okay, but you'll be sitting out if there's going to be a skirmish along the way. You can't afford to be stressed out too much or else your condition could come back. Kiba advised, and Hinata nodded. I'm prepared if it comes to that. Firm hands then were placed on Hinata's shoulders. Don't push yourself too hard. Was all Naruto could say before they all jumped from the lower box and into the arena, where the proctor was keeping the Junin from Suna busy. Hinata just nodded as they all jumped towards the place where Sasuke had left the arena. Can anyone tell where the team we're supposed to back up is? And how far are they? The blonde asked. Kiba, though he had found it slightly aggravating that Naruto was assigned as the leader for this mission, didn't make a comeback this time. Shino answered him, due northwest from the arena, most likely towards the heavily forested area there. Hinata, can you confirm this with your Byakugan? Hinata nodded and activated her Dujutsu. Her telescopic vision could see several familiar chakra signatures while another set was gaining traction on them, completely different and unknown to her. 2 kilometers due northwest, I see 4 familiar chakra signatures. It is Team 9 and Sakura-san that's in the group along with a dog summon. But there's a group following them, it's a high possibility that it's the enemy. Naruto inwardly cursed, damn it. Isn't there a shorter route for us to take and meet up for a chance to counter them? Kiba answered the blonde, there is a way around these woods, but I don't know if we should take on the group that's following them. They're most likely Chunin or Junin making up those ranks if they can keep up with Shikamaru's group. Indeed, the best course of action therefore, is to meet up with Shikamaru's group and from there formalize a plan to shake off their pursuers. Shino added helpfully, and Naruto cursed. With Shikamaru's group, Pakun was leading the group to try and shake off their pursuers. Behind him were Sakura and the 3 teammates of the other cell group that were in essence, rookies. He looked ahead once more and a new scent entered his nose. There's another group coming this way from another side, it smells like backup. Sakura and the rest sighed in relief. For now at least they'd have a better chance if their pursuers managed to catch up, which became more and more likely as time passed. Who is it? Sakura asked the dog summon, and Pakun replied in kind. Naruto and 3 other sense from the looks of it. Apparently, they caught wind of us pursuing Sasuke and the Sand Boy and they've been sent as backup. To this, most of the group felt some relief. They'll be arriving in 6 minutes. The dog informed them all the while Shikamaru kept glancing back every several seconds or so. How much time before those mooks managed to catch up? He asked and Pakun answered him as straight as possible. 4 minutes. Shikamaru cursed. Naruto's group would be 2 minutes too late before the group from behind them could catch up. He felt his stomach churn from the unease of it all. No matter how many of their delaying tactics were spread, they could still trace their tracks. These were probably formidable Chunin to Junin ninja. Wait a minute. Naruto's group is heading here faster than expected. Pakun announced. His nose twitched as he could smell Naruto's group approaching faster and faster. Shikamaru had a surprised look on his face but then turned into a smirk. Leave it to Naruto to surprise him enough. When will they arrive? Ino asked. Cold sweat was escaping the back of her head with the threat looming closer and closer. Give or take 3 minutes, 5 at most. Not enough to formulate a plan. Shikamaru thought as Choji and Sakura seemingly tried to put more effort in speeding up. We'll have to hold them off at this rate. We can't come up with a strategy until Naruto and his group arrive here in time. Someone has to stop them even for a few seconds in order for us to regroup. Shikamaru proposed and a great silence made its way within the quintet. Many of them realized that this was a suicide mission. Shikamaru was proposing that one of them be left behind and serve as a decoy. And it was probably the only thing that could help them right now with what they needed to do. Everyone was looking ahead or looking at all 4 of them and wanted to know who would be brave enough to pull it off. They contemplated the situation more and soon, 2 hands were raised up. They were Ino's and Shikamaru's. I'll serve as the decoy. Both of them said at the same time. Sakura and Choji looked at the both of them in surprise. No offense Ino, but your jutsu isn't suited for this. But we need you as our strategist, Shikamaru. You can't just. Shikamaru had cut him off from there. Out of all us here, who holds the better chance of holding the line here? Obviously it can't be Choji, although he has an offensive jutsu, it will be useless if he can't hit. They aren't going to be standing there long enough for them to take a rampaging boulder. You can't because your jutsu could only possess one person. You try possessing one and the other is just going to you. So you're out. Sakura can't because she doesn't have anything she can offer to stop them. Our best bet is me, it has to be me. Shikamaru explained this as easy as he can. But no matter how he had look at it, he was doomed. Unless those reinforcements arrived earlier than expected, that is. With that said, Shikamaru stopped leaping and dropped to the forest grounds below. Damn it! Why aren't Naruto and the others here yet? Ino cursed out aloud as she marked a tree to act as a false lead. When Shikamaru held himself back, he looked behind to anticipate the group of enemy ninja that was coming his way. And true enough, 8 ninjas, all wearing masks and the sign of Otogakur on their foreheads, stopped as they saw him and he landed on the forest floor below. Shikamaru looked calm and collected, but inwardly, he had never been more scared in his entire life. So, trying to delay us, one of the Oto ninja asked. Most likely, it was the strongest and possibly a Junin. Don't get cheeky with us, brat. Your bravado isn't going to save you. Your distraction would only delay us for several seconds. A leaf fell behind Shikamaru and he smirked. The cold sweat on his brow vanished as relief washed over him. I wouldn't be too sure of that if I were you. Shikamaru already had a lock on their shadows once they were down. 8 ninja trapped within his jutsu immediately. The infamous Kage Main no Jutsu, I see. Unfortunately for you, this is about the only thing that you could do on your own. Too bad, once we're free, you do understand that we're going to you, right? The shinobi asked that rhetorical question and Shikamaru shrugged. Oh, do your worst. It's not like I'm alone or anything. When Shikamaru said those words, 10 clones of Naruto fell from the canopy of leaves from above and landed beside him with the original carrying Hinata on his back. My backup was with me this whole time. Shikamaru then placed his hands in his pockets as Naruto told the Nara. Let go of your cage mane now, Shikamaru. Naruto shouted as his clones jumped to their designated targets as Shikamaru dispelled the jutsu, all the while following Naruto as they made a run for it. The clones were left behind as the masked ninjas formed a defensive perimeter around them. Only to find out too late that the clones were armed to self-destruct. Boom, 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 boom. Explosion after explosion was heard as the trio of Naruto with Hinata on his back, and Shikamaru jumped from the forest floor to the tree branches above. Did you them? Shikamaru asked. Naruto could only give a vague reply. Probably. The tags exploded before I found out. Shikamaru looked at the passenger riding on his back and then back to Naruto, as Hinata. Okay. She looks like she's ready to lose consciousness anytime now, Naruto. Hinata, who had been blushing an interesting shade of red, shook her head vigorously without a sound. I'm fine. It's just that we've been sent here as a support unit as fast as we can and I was in no condition to do any strenuous activities, so Naruto-kun had to carry me. When Hinata saw Shikamaru smirk a little at her though, that meant that Shikamaru had an idea. We'll do the small talk later. We need to come into contact with the others. That's right, you guys came in here as a single unit. Where are the other two? Shikamaru asked. Naruto had an annoyed look plastered on his face while looking at Shikamaru. Naruto replied, they're with Sakura-chan's group right now. We had to split up because of you, moron. Byakugan. Hinata once more used her dujutsu as to find out how far away they were from the original group. Shino-kun and Ino-san broke off from the group and are now facing the puppeteer from Suna. She reported. Naruto looked at Shikamaru as if seemingly asking him what to do next. Don't look at me, I'm not the team leader on this mission. He replied. He was going to say that Sakura was for being the one who Kakashi assigned for the mission. The blonde inwardly grumbled and looked on. How are they doing, Hinata? The blonde asked, and Hinata, seemingly focused on her task, replied without a stutter in her voice. They are doing well. Shino-kun is pressuring the puppeteer while Ino-san provides support. I think she's pointing where the Suna ninja is hiding while Shino-kun intercepts. Shikamaru looked up with a sigh. Ino always had this intuitive sense in her, as if she was made to be a censor or something. It's why we could never get away from her when we try to hide and slack off on training. You do know that you're training to increase your chances of survival, right? Naruto asked the Nara heir, who just shrugged it off and added, yeah, but it's such a pain. Shikamaru then asked the Hyuga on Naruto's back, are we clear of any pursuers? Hinata was silent for a moment and noticed the amount of people fallen on the forest floor. Behind or near them was the smoke that wafted from Naruto's paper bombs. Most of them had blown off a limb or two, while some were taken down instead with the arrival of a Junin that she could identify as Team 9's sensei. Not one to give a full detailed report of the carnage, the Hyuga could only say, we have none. Good, was all Shikamaru could say as he looked at the blonde, who was exerting a lot of effort in order to keep up. Sakura-san, Choji-san and Kiba-kun have managed to link up with Sasuke-san, although they're facing the Kunoichi from Suna. Gaara-san isn't with her. Shikamaru had a thoughtful look into this one. More delaying tactics. That Gaara kid must be essential for this whole invasion. Shikamaru mentioned this as Naruto nodded with him. Sasuke-san has initiated an assault with his fire jutsu, and Kiba-kun and Choji-san are engaging the Suna Kunoichi not far behind. Sakura-san and Sasuke-san are heading for Gaara-san. That report clearly shook Naruto to his core. If what Gaara said to him is true, then Sakura and Sasuke weren't prepared for the kind of monstrosity that Gaara could throw at them. With a snarl, he jumped faster from treetop to treetop as Shikamaru followed. Hey, what's the rush? You aren't seriously trying to face off with Gaara, are you? Shikamaru asked his comrade. Hinata on her part, looked worriedly at the blonde who could only reply, "We've got no other choice. They're planning something and we need to stop Gaara before it even happens. Then I'm going to have to break off from here and try to support Choji and Kiba. It'd be better to leave Hinata here with us too. Gaara's too dangerous of an opponent to bring someone who's injured to such a fight." Naruto couldn't dispute that fact alone. He knew that she couldn't fight due to her current condition. Wordlessly, he placed Hinata down gently on the ground with the Hyuga looking apologetic about the whole situation. I'm sorry I couldn't be of more use to you, Naruto-kun. Naruto simply shook his head and turned ahead, but not before looking back at Hinata. You've done your part as best as you can, Hinata. Without you, I doubt we could have met Shikamaru under better circumstances. Naruto reassured her and smiled before standing up. The blonde then turned to Shikamaru. This isn't an excuse to skip out on this fight, right, Shikamaru? The lazy genin had waved him off from there. Trust me, to where you're going, Hinata and I would be useless. I don't have much chakra left and I'm better off in the background giving orders. The Hyuga heiress simply said to the love of her life as he was about to leave, Naruto-kun, please come back safe. Naruto merely nodded and smiled at them and dashed towards the said area where Sasuke was prepared to face off with Gaara. As Naruto vanished before their eyes, Hinata and Shikamaru wordlessly turned back, towards where Choji and Kiba were facing off against the girl from Suna. I can't believe that all of us rookies are now involved in this battle. What are the chances of this happening? Hinata couldn't really answer. Every single one of them had become part of something significant for this whole conflict after all. Anyway, I'm going to set up a foothold here. I still have some tools left and we can better prepare traps here. While I'm doing that, try and scan the area every now and then to see if someone is going to this area that you can't recognize. We'll be providing field support, Hinata, though none of us know medical jutsu. I suppose you know some basic first aid, right? To this, Hinata nodded and Shikamaru handed her his first aid kit. Good. While you scan the perimeter, make sure to check our inventory. I think I may have some medicine there to counteract the most basic poisons. With Ino and Shino, battling puppeteers was a challenge of its own. Not only could they hide well enough, in their stealth, they can attack anyone at will provided their targets are within their range and they can see the opponent. Karasu clattered and clicked as it gave its dangerous sound of displaying its arsenal towards its two enemies. Konkuro smirked. Two genin fresh out of the academy and one that was completely unarmed. It shouldn't be a challenge. Shino turned to Ino and gave the Yamanaka his equipment. Why are you giving this to me? Shino adjusted his sunglasses as he replied, because you are unarmed and ill-equipped in this mission, Yamanaka-san. It is better if I give you my equipment. After all, I am not without my arsenal as well. Soon, swarms of insects surrounded Shino like a poisonous cloud. Each and every bit was buzzing in an ominous sound that clouded the entire being of the young Aburame. In their days as academy students, the one that followed closely behind Sasuke in terms of almost everything from academics to practical exams was Shino. Although he had an excellent record, he was outshined by the much more attention-grabbing Sasuke. Shino was often overlooked as if he didn't even bother with the theatrics, and although he had that dark and mysterious demeanor, he didn't match Sasuke's level of appeal in her eyes. But there was one thing she knew Shino was no pushover compared to many of the class. Ino saw her current teammate dissolve into a cluster of insects buzzing and flying wherever. She could feel her spine tingle in fear and somewhat horror. This was probably one of the reasons why girls tended to ignore Shino. The idea of him having such affinities with insects grossed out many of them and would like nothing more than to have nothing to do with him. The same with Naruto, although he was a different story altogether. Karasu gave a menacing clatter. The puppet spread its arms sidewards, all four of them as blades popped out of those linked, bamboo-like appendages while its mouth clattered like castanets, clicking and disturbingly pushing something out of its mouth. "Jump! Now!" she heard the boy say, and Ino did just that. As the puppet's mouth launched a small black ball that arched above their heads and headed their way, Ino did as she was told, and quickly grabbed 2 shuriken from her pouch and launched them from her right hand to her upper right side just as the ball the size of her head exploded in a purple haze of smoke. Instinctually, Kankuro jumped from his area just as the shuriken hit the bushes, surprise written all over his face. He noticed a shadow looming from above him and noticed the shaded Konoha nin up above him, arms raised over his head. Smack! Kankuro managed to block the strike with his arms even with the brunt of Shino's weight pressing him down. Kankuro immediately landed on the ground due to the force, but by no means was he caught flat-footed with that attack. Kankuro inwardly thanked his rigorous training from his father and the puppet squad, or else that would have tagged him there. In response, he whipped his arms around as Karasu immediately followed suit. It embraced Kankuro like a dangerous cocoon with its poisonous blades whipped out. Up above, Shino and his teammate, the weak blonde girl, were looking down on him. "It was good that you were able to sense our enemy and reacted the way you did, Ino-san," Shino remarked. Ino kept her attention to the Suna nin who was taking a defensive stance. "I didn't. It was just a hunch. I was lucky enough that he would come out of his hiding spot just like that." Shino raised his eyebrow at this. Was Ino a natural sensor perhaps? Or underneath that headstrong persona lied a girl that had enough deduction skills to pull out their enemy? Either way, he was sure that Ino would serve well with a recon or spec ops squad. Recommendations would come later though, as he once more dissolved in a mass of insects while Ino pulled out a kunai from his pouch, this time, a look of cold determination etched on her face. Kankuro was sweating from the tension. He already knew much of the abilities that these kids fresh out of the academy had displayed. Yet, why couldn't he shake this ominous feeling as if he was being thrown into a pit of snakes? And those eyes that the blonde girl just displayed. She looked like she was smelling blood. Ino chose this moment to jump into the bushes and into hiding. If there was one thing that Konoha shinobi were experts of, it was jungle warfare. No other shinobi in the elemental nations knew more about how to fight in a forest than them. Not only were they versed in fighting inside a forest, this was also Konoha's territory, which meant they knew the terrain more than any other shinobi on the planet. Perhaps, this is what shook Kankuro to his core. As soon as the leaves rustled, Kankuro took action. With the clattering of Karasu's jaw, it shifted from the poison ball to the mechanism that launched poisonous Senbon and promptly began firing its stored ammunition to any area where he heard the leaves rustle. Kankuro never once left the protective cover offered by his puppet and tried to reduce the consumption of his Senbon to a halt. He knew Karasu had more weapons than this, but he needed to keep them hidden until the later parts of the invasion. Senbon whizzed through the battlefield, flying past any shrubbery or tree that Kankuro thought where the sounds of rustling came from. They flew fast, faster than what any shinobi could effectively throw. Suddenly, Ino sprung out to his right, kunai drawn in a reverse grip. Kankuro had swung his arms and Karasu complied. Clattering once more, the puppet's head turned to Ino and from its mouth, fired a flurry of Senbon laced in purple liquid. Ino dodged to her right with a sidestep as a needle almost pierced her cheek and sailed past her by a narrow margin. With a grit of her teeth, Ino decided to throw the kunai straight to Kankuro, whose puppet parried with a spark of metal. Blade for blade clashed and sparks flew as the kunai was deflected. Kankuro was about to counter the blonde when Shino appeared, once more beside him, attacking him in a complete blind spot. His senses kicking in, Kankuro leaned to the side as Karasu levitated from Kankuro's back, and from its uppermost right arm, a blade went to cut Shino down. The Aburame ducked just in time and jumped back as Kankuro's puppet went for another slash of its own, this time with its middle right arm. He could see Shino jump back into the foliage, and Kankuro took this opportunity to hide as well. Damn that freak. He attacked where I couldn't see. These Konoha genin apparently know their stuff. His puppet clattered very loud as it moved its jaws. Kankuro decided that if he was going to win this fight, he needed to clear the area of any hiding spots that these genin might have. He gritted his teeth in frustration. He was being forced to reveal Karasu's arsenal bit by bit as the battle continued. Karasu convulsed wildly in the puppet's bamboo-like arms in the poisonous single-edged blades and began hovering around. With a flick of his fingers, Kankuro's puppet Karasu had adjusted its neck with a click as it raised upwards a little. A ball the size of its head dropped from its cloak as it gave an impression of flying around the small area, and soon, 4 more of the objects dropped from its cloak as it soared in the air all around the puppet. Ino watched cautiously from her vantage point. She noted with caution that the puppet was probably zoning and setting up an area where their opponent was probably going to be safe. Those large cannonball-sized objects that Karasu had dropped were wrapped with paper bombs, making the puppeteer completely safe from any attack that she might use at close range. Not like I can do much anyways. Ino muttered to herself in self-deprecation. She knew inside her mind that she would be a burden to this team if it involved a whole lot of fighting. She was even commented on by Asuma that once outside Shikamaru and Choji's parameters of locking down and immobilizing opponents, she was left vulnerable. A sudden jump from the shrubbery below her caught her off guard as Shino had tackled her as hard as he can and whispered into her ear. That was just a decoy. Then a fiery blaze invaded her vision. Her hiding spot had just exploded in a pillar of flames as it burned the leaves. Ino's shock at this turn of events shook her to her core. On reflex, she could only give a hollow stare as her eyes began watering and tears started to fall down her cheeks. If I haven't been saved by Shino, I could have possibly, and then, the harsh truth had invaded her senses, making her shiver in pure abject horror. If she had been alone, or if she didn't have a good teammate, she would have burned down to ashes as well, like those leaves that she just saw being consumed by the flames. I don't want to die. As if hearing her thoughts, Shino spoke out loud, if you wish to turn back now, Ino-san, this is your last chance. I would not blame you for saving yourself after nearly getting in the line of duty. Besides, the battle is just about to end, anyway. As if to let her walk away, Shino dissolved into a crowd of insects and dropped down to the ground below. Ino watched wordlessly as her classmate continued to do battle with the deadly puppeteer from Suna. She could feel her arms still shaking from the fear. Her eyes caught notice of Shino's attire. At his back his jacket was slightly singed, showing off some nasty wounds that were burned or cauterized at the same time. It was a horrible display, but Ino couldn't turn her eyes away from such a gruesome wound. No, stop, she commanded her body. Her mind was rapidly telling her body to come to its senses, to stop its quaking and giving in to fear. Stop shaking, Ino. Ino commanded herself, steeling her nerves as she gritted her teeth, and prepared to lunge forward with 10 kunai in her hands. If I give in to fear right now, I may never grow strong. As if she had abandoned all sense of reason and thought in her mind, Ino jumped down, head first towards her target, the Suna puppeteer who was dueling with Shino. I'll never survive. And then, with all fear escaping her body and its grip loosened, Ino had shouted at the top of her lungs, and she let go of the kunai in her as each flew towards the puppeteer. Kankuro jumped backwards, avoiding the kunai that was raining down on him while the bug user chased after him. Kankuro gritted his teeth. He could honestly feel annoyed at the level of persistence from these Konoha shinobi. Nothing seemed to deter them. In the midst of his frustrations, Kankuro had suffered a momentary slip. Ino had landed beside him, one more kunai drawn from her pouch, held in a firm grip, eyes blazing with conviction and terror no longer plaguing her. Time seemed to slow down, as the kunai slowly inched its way towards his stomach. No manner of speed could he ever hope to have in order to perform a quick substitution. Instinctively, he moved Karasu to intercept Ino. Karasu's poisoned blade struck Ino on her right shoulder. Blood dripped as Ino flinched slightly, but it never stopped her as she continued her attack. She plunged the kunai deep within Kankuro's abdomen and her blood mixed with Kankuro's, the combined liquid splashing her face as Kankuro staggered back. Time seemed to restore itself back again as Kankuro decided to pull out the kunai from his stomach. He flinched as he breathed heavily, but his feeling of victory came short when a hand fell to his shoulders. Haijutsu. Mushidama, secret technique. Insect sphere, like gathering moths to a flame, thousands upon thousands of insects made their way towards Kankuro, completely enveloping him as Shino walked away. All adrenaline finally leaving his body as he could hear Kankuro's cry for mercy, he ignored it in favor of getting Ino proper medical attention. On his third step, just as he was about to go to Ino, who was breathing raggedly and heating up, his vision blurred as he collapsed down to the ground, too injured to go on. Just as he was about to close his eyes, three shadows had obscured his view of the light and then a huge pillar of smoke. With Choji and Kiba, although she was slowed down by Sasuke's fire jutsu, Temari remained a threat and a really difficult opponent to pass through against the two close-ranged fighters Kiba and Choji. Temari had known this and kept her distance between the three of them. She knew that Kiba was nimble and fast due to his style, but the fat genin was slow and probably only offered power that was severely limited. She had learned to keep away from them. Especially the dog user. Out of the two, he was the more dangerous opponent and can get up close and personal fast unless she reacts in time. If only I had enough ninja tools. Choji muttered as Kiba clicked his tongue. That's what you get for spending all your money on snacks. Kiba never forgets to not mention the F word. He knew exactly how Choji feels if he gets to be called that. Not like you can do anything anyway, fat ass. Temari riled Choji up and Kiba flinched along with Akamaru. Unlike his partner right now, Kiba had the mind to be prepared even if there was no invasion. He didn't exactly feel safe when his mother had refilled his pouch the other day and said to take it with him at all times. He was glad his mother had been sensible enough to do things like that. Choji charged to the branches straight ahead as Temari smirked. Too easy. The Suna Kunoichi raised her fan, and was about to swing when she felt a noticeable weight placed on her weapon. She looked up and saw Kiba, with his dog on top of his head, arms in his pockets and weighing down on her weapon with all his weight. Sorry about that, I'm holding onto this for a second, Kiba mentioned as Choji came charging in with his right hand enlarged, about the size of a really thick and really long pillar. Buban Baika no Jutsu, partial multi-size technique. Temari had likened it to one of the support beams of the Wind Daimyo's palace. Deciding to forego her fan for a moment, she flipped upwards and performed two sets of hand seals as Kiba was about to attack her. She dodged the gigantic fist in time as the dog user hadn't expected the girl from Suna to suddenly attack him with some other form of ninjutsu as she held her palm straight to his face. With pure stone-cold conviction, she announced the name of the technique and the wind picked up in speed. Futon. Juahasho wind release. Beast wave palm, and Kiba was blasted away from her, sending him hurtling to the other side of the clearing. In quick succession, Tamari regained her fan and rode it on her feet as she glided towards Choji with weapons drawn. Choji quickly dispelled the jutsu and rolled to the side as Tamari went past him. But not before letting loose a handful of kunai from her hands and forcing him to jump back multiple times. A blur had suddenly whizzed through the canopy past Choji as it ricocheted from branch to branch before finally shouting as it neared the Sunakunoichi. Shikyaku no Jutsu, 4 legs technique. A whirlwind of savage claws and sharpened nails slashed at her from all angles as Kiba landed on a branch in front of her. Tamari could suddenly feel that her left side and right shoulder had a sharp intense pain as they wept blood. The red liquid staining her otherwise white clothing to her left torso and her said shoulder, small pieces of clothing and mesh were literally shredded out of her. I forgot this kid can be fast. And the boy looked back, blood seeping from his forehead with a small cut that managed to block the vision from his right eye. Tamari jumped from her fan and landed just above the canopy of trees as she was then pursued by another drilling object. Shit. It's the dog. A piercing fang gave hot pursuit upwards as Tamari performed a backflip, effectively evading the small puppy's attack, and she once more performed another set of hand seals as she descended. I won't let you. Kiba shouted as he charged towards Tamari with a flip and spun around in midair. Chakra escaping his body, Kiba spun like a mad top as he charged at the Sunakunoichi. Suga piercing fang. Tamari looked surprised for a moment as Kiba had torn through her like wet tissue paper, only to disappear in a white cloud of smoke and be replaced with a log. As the object landed, Kiba looked back once more. Tamari was inside his range and she was grasping her fan sideways, already in midswing. You're still far too simple. Komedachi, sickling winds. A huge gust of wind blasted its way towards Kiba, who had no time to dodge as he could only brace himself from what would inevitably be a painful experience. Baika no Jutsu, multi-size technique. A round object, equal to the size of a boulder, spun wildly and landed at Kiba's front, swirling like a miniature twister and shielding him from the force of the cutting wind. As the torrent died down, Kiba quickly noted that it was Choji and he had just been shielded from the San Kunoichi's attacks. When the turbulence stopped, when Kiba could see small gashes forming and blood dripping on Choji's torso, Kiba looked surprised. Some of it even managed to spray on Kiba's face, much to Kiba's abject horror. When Choji stopped spinning, his face revealed that he was in great pain. Multiple gashes littered his body and his hands were up over his face, shielding his eyes as he breathed heavily. Are you okay, Kiba? He asked between pants of breath while Kiba was shaking in fury. Inside he was screaming at Choji for what he deemed as a necessary sacrifice. You stupid, reckless, headed fatass. You're not supposed to act as a human shield. Were it any more powerful, then Choji could have possibly died then and there. Weren't it for Choji's decision, he would be the one that was bleeding from a lot of parts in his body. He would be the one to suffer that fate. Weren't it for his stupidity, none of this would have happened. In rage, Kiba shouted out into the wild as frustration edged in his voice. God damn it. Chouji. As if on cue, the boy fell just in front of him face first onto the tree branches, consciousness leaving him as the pain overwhelmed most of his senses. Kiba gritted his teeth in anger, snarling at the kunoichi as he did so. Tamari looked at Kiba with caution. This was the moment that she had been waiting for. The boy was disconcerted with a teammate downed in front of him. This was her moment to finish the fight. Tamari then prepared the final nail on the coffin as she pointed at the boy. You Konoha nin should know by now what it's really like to be a shinobi. That kid right in front of you, he may have been clumsy, but he knew how a shinobi should act. It's a fact of life for us. People will die in our field. Shut up. You talk too much. Kiba had then vanished in a swirl of leaves, leaving behind his teammate that was unconscious on the large branch. I don't want to hear it coming from. In an instant, Kiba had suddenly appeared on her side, the leaves rustling as he did so. Temari jumped sideways, kunai ready to fire, when another image of the feral boy appeared just behind her, claws ready to rend her to bits. Someone like you. In an instant, Kiba and Akamaru went past Temari and each other with a pincer attack that she had not seen coming. While it is true that the kunoichi had far more skill compared to them, Kiba had the better advantage still. Looking around, the leaves rustled as the wind made its way throughout the entire forest. No one in the entire continent was more proficient in fighting within a forest than they were. Temari gritted her teeth as a part of her clothes were shredded from the attack and attacking her skin just deep enough for a nasty gash. She hissed at the pain as she immediately tried to get away from her attacker. Kiba and Akamaru wouldn't let her do as she pleased. Then she realized right then and there that the feral boy had a dog with him. That meant trying to hide out of sight and concealing herself would be useless against him. Now she had realized the magnitude of the disadvantage that she was within. Terrain advantage, agility meant for taking down enemies the quickest way possible, and a tracking ability that's suitable for such a style. She cursed as she landed on the ground on all fours and looked up as the boy was chasing after her, already closing the distance with an expression that could frighten any wounded prey in his eyes. Temari swung her fan once more. At mid-swing, however, the transformed dog that was Kiba's partner intercepted her at the last second, making her cringe as it just managed to slash at the back of her thigh. The wound forced her down as Kiba launched himself from the tree stump and spun in midair, descending from directly above her. Temari managed to roll in time as Kiba was surrounded by a cloud of smoke. A smoke bomb later, Temari was suddenly enveloped by the thick cloud. Kiba went in for the Gatsuga, fang over fang. What happened next was Temari being shredded from all sides in the cloud of billowing smoke and debris. When the smoke cleared, Temari was down, alive, but severely injured. The sharp stinging sensation as if 1,000 blades had touched her skin made her cringe in pure agony. She looked up, the feral boy looking down on her, kunai in hand as he stared at her with indifferent eyes. A large shadow was cast behind the boy as Temari's expression turned became much more frightened with this outcome. Oh no! A maniacal laugh escaped and echoed throughout the forest, but that didn't seem to compare to the towering beast that seemed to have blotted out the sun. With Naruto, fear was a driving force within Naruto. Like determination, like rage, fear had a certain impact within him that many would not even notice unless he voiced it out. His legs were shaking with every landing and forceful jumping. He could feel the utter sense of dread that escaped his being when Gaara had announced to him and Shikamaru that his people had sealed something inside him. Out of all the people inside that room that day, he understood Gaara the most. What would a human like him could feel when under the scrutinizing eyes of other humans labeling them as monsters and other hurtful words that seemed to pierce even the coldest of hearts, he understood him. He understood the complete isolation, the desolation, loneliness, the pain of having no one to understand you, no one to help you, to hold your hand and appreciate the company of other people. Naruto wondered if he had been teetering on the edge like Gaara was back then. There were no emotions displayed in those eyes, only turmoil, anger, grief and hate. He had walked a mile in his shoes in a matter of seconds. All of it came crashing down upon him as he had realized. He would have been like Gaara given the chance. As he got in sight of his teammates, Naruto's determined expression turned fierce. He made a mad dash forward just as a pillar of sand shot out from Gaara's monstrous deformed change. Half of his face was covered in sand and his right arm was enveloped by it. A tail was swaying behind him as it smacked Sasuke directly in the face, sending the last Uchiha in the opposite direction. The sand-covered hand, however, was sent in a different one. Towards an unsuspecting Sakura who had no time to dodge. Time seemed to slow down a little for Sakura. As the pillar of sand came at her at incredible speeds, she could not react in time, nor could she set up a proper defense. As if the sand was going to envelop her, she felt something painful shove her at the waist, pushing her away. She turned her head back and saw Naruto in her place. As if time was moving normally again, Sakura saw the blonde get smashed into by the pillar of toughened sand, blasting her blonde teammate away before finally being slammed into a tree. Naruto coughed up blood as his world exploded in agonizing pain. If he could stretch himself, he would, just from the sheer amount of pain he was in. He could feel something sharp stabbing his back. He could hardly breathe. But he could definitely hear Gaara's twisted laugh and the voices of Sasuke and Sakura calling out his name. Naruto. I see your death, Uzumaki Naruto. Gaara shouted in complete psychosis. His mind was running with different thoughts, different voices appearing in his head, telling him to the blonde now. But it was not to be, as the sound of 1,000 birds screeching in the air cut off the pillar of sand with a flash of lightning. Chakra crackled and screeched on Sasuke's forearm. Gaara roared in pain as he thrashed about. Sasuke jumped back as another barrage of sand came down on him, his Sharingan making it easier to evade in time. When he landed, he could feel the strain of using Chidori whittling away at his remaining chakra. The mark of the cursed seal began spreading across half of his face this time as he was clenching his teeth and bearing the burning sensation that was slowly spreading from the back of his shoulder. Damn it, that was my last shot, was all he could think of as he went down on his knees. Sakura soon came to his side as he was watching their blonde teammate slowly had his life taken away from him. Although the connection had been cut off, his control hadn't. Gaara noticed the sand that had pinned the blonde down maintained its grip on his target. With a sneer, Gaara recovered from the pain just as he said to the boy. Now you see where your foolish ideals get to you. You place yourself on the line just to save someone worthless in the end. You cannot even speak for yourself anymore. By that impact alone, your ribs would have cut your lungs to pieces. With that, he held his hand uncovered with sand and slowly began constricting the blonde, who flinched just from the slight movement alone. He could only feel pain. So much was the pain that it even hurt just breathing in air for him. He was gasping for it, slowly being deprived of the oxygen that he needed so much. Another tightening of his bindings of sand and he began coughing and tried to grab much more oxygen than he could have ever wanted. But he could only cough out more and more red liquid that was already staining the sands and slowly dripping to the ground below. Sakura could only watch in horror as Sasuke slammed his right arm onto a tree. They couldn't do anything. He was too exhausted for one more jutsu and Sakura had no answer in trying to set their teammate free. God damn it! God damn it! Sasuke inwardly cursed as Gaara cackled in madness while Sasuke and Sakura could only watch. For someone so tragic, you fail to see the power that lies in the palms of your hands, Uzumaki Naruto. Your existence is not warranted compared to mine. Sakura had tears running down her eyes as finally, Naruto let out something from his voice, only it was the sound of his anguished screams while Gaara continued to crush the blonde little by little, inch by agonizing inch. He could not predict, however, when Naruto stared right back at him in anger and spoke by sheer force of will. It was low and shaking, but nonetheless, Sasuke, Sakura and Gaara could hear his voice as clear as day. Don't ever underestimate me, he shouted, and an explosion of power soon emerged from Naruto. The sand that surrounded him suddenly scattered as it was pushed back from the blonde by pure chakra alone. When Naruto got down on a branch, he was kneeling forward with his right hand supporting himself. He could feel the Kyuubi's chakra already beginning their work as wounds began to heal at an unprecedented rate and his bones began realigning themselves back into their proper places. Naruto grinned. A fierce, maniacal and evil grin as he prepared for his run, much like how an athlete was supposed to position himself before he lunged at Gaara at a speed that would leave even Rock Lee proud. Naruto looked like a mess of yellow, black, orange and red as he sailed through the air and landed onto one of the sand tentacles, his chakra seemingly protecting him from any form of control coming from the red-headed boy. Naruto then formed a single seal, his favorite technique coming to life, multiplied. Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, multi-shadow clone jutsu. And soon an entire forest was enveloped with Narutos. Too many, spread out as far as the eye could see, and all of them were heading straight to Gaara at breakneck speed. The redhead merely covered his face from the onslaught that was the clones. But many of them were no match as his sand protected him from most of the fists that were coming his way. An explosion later rocked the branch he was standing on, as it gave away after the tree seemed to spontaneously detonate. Down below, Naruto was holding his right hand in a half-Hitsuji seal. Plastering the last of his explosive notes onto the underbelly of the branch that was directly below Gaara, it was the first time he had managed to tame some of the Kyuubi's chakra. It felt completely different this time. Instead of him balancing himself with a pole in a sea, it was like he was only pulling water in a deep well. The amount of chakra he was expelling felt completely different than the first time he had any conscious thought of doing so. It felt so diluted, so simple yet. A loud thunderous explosion was once again heard as Naruto dashed forward into the billowing soot and debris as the red shroud enveloped him like a burning flame. The chakra was too addicting. The surviving clones soon jumped in too as they seemed to spiral their way into their target, who had managed to wrap himself up in a cocoon of sand. But what of it, if the strength of a Jinchuriki powered by pure Biju chakra could simply yank him away from the inside? As Naruto pulled a surprised Gaara out of his shell, the blonde with the image of a burning demon tossed him outside his shell as fist after fist of the blonde's clones began pummeling him to the ground. Naruto never let up. He knew he was going to regret it the moment that he even stopped. He needed to end this now or risk of what further harm the boy could do to the others. But try as he might, he could never just pierce that damn sand armor of his. Sure, he may have destroyed large parts of it and it may have cost the boy a lot of chakra, but his jutsu also did as well. Naruto may be a powerhouse, but creating an entire battalion from nothing was no small expenditure on his part. He looked down and saw Gaara trying desperately to fend off the clones that began to harass him left and right. With 3 simple hand seals, Naruto had awoken Tenrin to life as he stared down at Gaara and pushing himself forward, left hand holding his right arm in front of him, Naruto straight up charged the red-headed sand ninja. In an instant, both of them had managed to make eye contact with one another. One was an enraged, quivering, psychotic mess, while the other, filled with anger, sadness, grief and what could possibly be empathy. You will not deny my existence today, Uzumaki Naruto. Bring it, Psycho. Sand and wind danced as both of their jutsu clashed and created a shockwave that blasted Naruto away. The blonde landed clumsily on the ground, skidding to a halt as smoke covered the entire landscape as far as he could see. Never charge a Tenrin with Kyuubi's chakra. That shit definitely isn't worth the damn pain of molding it into a different element. The smoke cleared and soon, a strange silhouette of something stood in Gaara's place. It was a hulking mass of something and it had a huge tail to boot. When it stretched its arms, the mismatched arms of the boy were replaced with 2 fully formed and symmetrical clawed Biju arms. It looked at the blonde in contempt as he saw the surviving clones landing beside their creator with kunai drawn just in case anything went wrong. Futon. Naruto was suddenly startled when the creature with Gaara's voice had many open mouths taking in air from whichever way he was coming from. Mugen Sajin Datapa, Infinite Sandstorm Great Breakthrough. And soon lots of sand-covered wind escaped from these mouths and tore through Naruto's army like they were nothing, dispelling half of the remaining clones as the others either braced for the impact or ran for cover. Some of the clones that remained were then pelted by small packets of sand that the redhead threw all around. They were about the size of a normal shuriken and they tore through Naruto's clones like they were paper. The monstrous figure grinned as it stared at Naruto, showing off its elongated sharp set of teeth before countless streams of sand began to lash out in every which way. Naruto was shielding his eyes from the force of the debris that the sand left behind when it lashed out at the remaining clones that had assaulted Gaara earlier on. The severely deformed pillars coalesced into a single spot, gathering into something, and then the entire area was covered in a huge cloud of white smoke. Naruto watched in astonishment. The smoke cleared and out came a beast taller than any building he had seen and tail almost as big as its body, jagged like it was composed of scales. Its entire body was littered with curving lines to wherever part of his body had them. Yellow irises stared down at Naruto, who could only stare back at such a thing that was grinning at him before it gave a bone-piercing manic laugh. To Gaara, as he stared down at the blonde, who manifested the power of a Biju just like him at this stage, he knew. Perhaps Naruto knew also as he stared right back at the demonic form before him. He too prepared himself once more. In both of their eyes, they could tell as they faced each other. Each of them knowing what the other would feel left little to no more than as a matter of fact, they both knew. This was not science and neither would need it to figure it out. The fight had only just begun. Shikamaru was relieved when he found Shino's father as he was scouring the forest around the skirmishes that involved his classmates. Worry had escaped him when he found Shino and Ino, who were unconscious, bleeding and probably poisoned by the puppeteer's arsenal, but felt assured when Shibi was inoculating his healing bugs and siphoning the poison out of the two of them. Behind them was Asuma, who was looking down at the downed genin as he looked around. He could tell that there were signs of skirmishes all around. Let's get back to that foothold with Hinata. We've already set up a perimeter there. We should be expecting Choji and Kiba any minute. Asuma suggested, and the two nodded. Before they could carry the two unconscious children and the soon-to-be political prisoner, a tall cloud of smoke had just emerged just in front of them. It wasn't close to them, but it was definitely worrisome. Shikamaru wasted no time to see the thing for itself and jumped higher into the treetops. He stopped when he saw a giant tanuki with a massive tail standing on all fours above the tall trees that they were standing on. Seeing this, Asuma cursed to himself and carried Ino to make a beeline at the perimeter. Shit. Soon as Jinchuriki is out of control, we have to make a call to Jiraiya-sama and pull those kids out. Alarmed, Shikamaru looked at Asuma and asked, "What the hell is a Jinchuriki? What on earth is that thing?" Asuma dismissed the boy's questions for a moment. "It's none of your concern, Shikamaru. At least not yet. It's better to ask these questions when you've ranked up and able to take this information without blowing things out of proportion. It is damn well my concern. If that thing is as dangerous as what you have been expressing and asking for one of the Sannin to help, then that means I've sent some of my comrades to their deaths when they're facing those Sunanin." Shikamaru explained, knowing full well that if somehow some of his comrades were during this apparently suicidal mission, then it fell on his conscience that he had just marked them for death. Shibi was finally the one to speak and answered Shikamaru calmly. "We honestly didn't have an idea that he was able to use his powers to this extent. The Jinchuriki is unstable, so we had initially thought that it would be of no concern if he suddenly runs amok. We've had Anbu, who are experts in Fuinjutsu, trailing him up until now." Quote, "Shibi, are you listening to yourself? This kind of information is, Asuma tried to stop him there but Shibi refuted the son of the Sandame. Shikamaru had raised an eyebrow at this. It is time that he learns the truth, Asuma-san. Konoha isn't bright and sunny as many would portray to believe. People who would think otherwise are deluding themselves. The patriarch of the Aburame clan then turned to Shikamaru as he placed Shino on his shoulders and stood up. Jinchuriki are a special kind of shinobi. They are humans who have a biju sealed inside them. Biju are massive creatures made entirely of dense chakra constructs. They are highly destructive and volatile. As such, hidden villages have sought after their power for many long years. The trio began to move towards their makeshift stronghold as Shikamaru dictated them with the correct path as to not spring the traps that he had set up. Due to this, Jinchuriki are considered the ultimate deterrents to war. They are the last line of decision every village falls into. It should be noted, however, that only 9 Jinchuriki can exist and these 9 humans are placed within the major world superpowers that currently stands. 3 of the 5 main villages carry 2 Jinchuriki while Suna and Taki carry 1. So I'm guessing that there is one in Konoha too, right? Shikamaru had cut off Shibi from there. Shibi only nodded but added, there is, though I cannot speak of who that person is. There is a law forbidding us to make a mention of that person. It is considered a high ground for treason should the information leak through a younger age group. Why? Was Shikamaru's question. Asuma and Shibi looked at the other as Asuma answered his student. Ah, what the hell, might as well answer your question. Asuma lit up a cigarette and took a long drag before he answered boy. Jinchuriki aren't normally treated well. They are abused, ill-begotten and sometimes would be used as sacrificial pieces. It was then that they arrived at their makeshift stronghold when Hinata heard this part of their conversation. But why? I thought Jinchuriki are the ultimate deterrents for war. That's what's twisted to it, kid. Man fears what he cannot understand. One cannot understand the side effects that a person has to bear to become that sacrifice to carry a biju inside them until they die. Jinchuriki are, for a better term, impractical. They are easily driven mad because of the influence of these beasts sealed inside them. Add to the fact that any person can become a Jinchuriki at a given moment. They may be deterrents, but in the eyes of a pragmatic leader, they are expendable pawns as long as another host can be made available. Armed with this truth, Shikamaru looked at the 2 adults as they made it in their makeshift operations. His mind began processing the statements of the 2 adults in front of him as Hinata began to tend to the wounds of Ino and Shino while Asuma did with the captured Sunanin. It's Naruto, isn't it? Asuma and Shibi remained quiet. But Hinata froze for a moment when she heard the boy's name but nonetheless continued with her work. He's the Jinchuriki, he's your deterrent, right? And by biju you meant the Kyuubi, right? Shikamaru asked once more. The 2 men didn't answer. Hinata, however, was listening to their conversation. It all makes perfect sense. Naruto would be the perfect candidate to become the host for the Kyuubi, who attacked the village 12 years ago. He's an orphan, after all. No loving parent could ever subject their child to such an abusive and cruel project. I notice the mistreatment and the prejudice that many of the adults have against him, yet some of their thoughts and actions manifest to their children. That's why even though they don't know, they're becoming a part of the ostracizing as well. Shikamaru added, and suddenly, he could hear small sobs coming from Hinata, but not that she was showing it, she was hiding it when she was bandaging Ino wounds. What on earth were we fighting for in the first place? If they could subject Naruto-kun to such a cruel environment, she had realized that the monster wasn't the host that everyone had been naming. It was the reflection of the mirror that was staring right back at them. Shikamaru kept silent as he waited for the 2 to give him answer, Asuma made an excuse and said he would find Choji and Kiba and disappeared via Shunshin while Shibi stayed behind. Tell me, Shibi-san, at least answer me this. Would you consider Naruto as some pawn to be sacrificed if things get terrible? Just like that kid from Suna. Apparently, all of the adults were in the conspiracy of this. Shibi noted Shikamaru's voice. It was pleading as if he was trying to find some form of reassurance. Because if they could treat Naruto as dispensable tool, then what were their chances of being the same? In essentiality, they were nothing more than cannon fodder. There's one person who I could think of that wouldn't be above using such means. The Sandaime has kept him at bay, but it may not be for long if he would not survive this crisis. Who? The two shinobi turned to the voice of the girl that finished patching up her comrades. Hinata was looking intently at them. Eyes filled with sorrow. The man's name is Danzo. And he wouldn't stop until he has the necessary pieces in his hand to put control over the village. He is Sandaime-sama's rival for the seat of Hokage and former leader of a defunct Anbu branch codenamed Ne. A chill went up Shikamaru's spine. If by chance that the Sandaime does die and the two remaining members of the Sannin refuse the title, which was most likely, then the best candidate to take the position would be this Danzo person. If that happened, then most likely, they would be subjected to the same treatment. The ground shook and a force of a strong hurricane escaped through the forest. Hinata, Shikamaru and Shibi braced themselves as they looked out from their hollow tree. Out there, the Aikibi no Shukaku was facing off with what seemed to be a giant toad. It wasn't really that near, but they could hear the loud gigantic voices that came with them. It must be Jiraiya-sama. Shibi noted until the loud booming voice of the giant toad was heard to their side of the forest. Fine then, I accept you as my underling, Uzumaki Naruto. Shikamaru and Hinata looked gobsmacked while Shibi had raised an eyebrow at this. Just what kind of training did Naruto underwent to have this many bag of tricks in his sleeve? With Naruto. When Naruto saw the giant raccoon dog staring down at him with an amused expression, he knew he was in deep shit. He also knew that it takes two giant animals to do the giant tango. Biting his lip, Naruto drew blood and whisked it at his left palm. With 5 hand signs of boar, dog, bird, monkey and ram, the boy slammed his left hand and shouted at the top of his lungs. Kuchio's no jutsu. He already knew who was going to appear in that giant cloud of smoke. Being infused with the chakra of the Kyuubi, he knew the gigantic toad summon that could help him in this case. Gamabunta. What in all that as sagely as this? The toad boss pointed to the titanic creature in front of him. Not that he was asking what the creature was in front of him, he already knew that it was the Aikibi no Shukaku, but what he wanted to know was why is Naruto facing off against one of the most dreaded creatures to ever walk this planet. He wouldn't get his answer though as Shukaku raised its massive forearms and began swiping at Gamabunta who drew his tanto to block the Biju's assault. Fun. This is fun. You entertain me greatly, Uzumaki Naruto. You. He replied. It was Naruto's best comeback. Not that he had to, but it felt right tossing it in there against that. He turned to Gamabunta and said to the toad summon, sorry about this boss, but I need your help. I can't let that thing get near Konoha. I need to stop him here and now before he does any more damage. It's easier said than done, brat. We're fighting one of the Biju here and I'm doing most of the dirty work, mind you. Hey. That was one hell of a pain in the when I fought him a while ago. Crazy bastard broke my ribs. Naruto said this as he pointed to the spot where there was a small tear in his black shirt. Oh boo-hoo, did the whittle bwat got hud on p weighing with the fluffy animal. Ah, listen up, boss, help me out here, look at that guy, he looks like he's about to take a shit on my village. I can't let him get past here. We have to stop him here. Bunta was going to refute that Jiraiya had a better chance of stopping this monster here, but then this guy was getting really aggressive and he was not going to stop with it too. The giant toad swung his equally giant knife sideways to fend off Shukaku with a swipe. The beast was halted for a second when the toad boss lunged and decided to tear one of limbs apart with his knife. Said blade pierced through, but Gamabunta had a hard time cutting apart the said appendage. When he did so, Gamabunta jumped back when Shukaku swiped with its other arm. The toad chief clicked his tongue in disappointment as he said, "Damn that arm, it's too thick to make a clean cut." "Just what is that thing, anyway?" Naruto asked, and the toad chief answered as it let out a smoke from its pipe. "The Ikibi no Shukaku. He's a Biju who has control over sand and wind. You'll notice as a trademark for the host of Shukaku is that many of its jailers went insane from insomnia. The rings around their eyes indicate the massive sleep deprivation that they suffer because of Shukaku trying to take over." Naruto recalled the rings surrounding Gaara's eyes. It looked somewhat like makeup, of course, until he realized just what they actually were. The host of the Ikibi slowly appeared on top of the beast's head and looked at Naruto, quickly took attention to the boy having neither irises nor pupils as he grinned widely at him. "To think that you can even keep up with me in this form, you truly are an interesting person," the redhead said in monotone as he placed his hands together in the seal of the ram. Tanuki Niri no Jutsu, false sleeping technique. Silence remained, and a pause of anticipation and dread filled the air. Gamabunta cursed as he readied himself as well as Naruto. "Blast it all to hell. That brat actually did it." Inside Naruto, the Kyuubi looked on in interest as it chuckled. The link that he obtained from leaking his chakra to Naruto made him see things for himself, and what he saw clearly made him feel amused. The Kyuubi spoke to Naruto with this, making a large toothy grin. "Should you wish to end this fight now, then rely on me more, brat." Shukaku awoke. "Not now." A powerful cry was heard. "Do not think of yourself highly, brat. Against a Biju, you are insignificant." Then its eyes glowed. "I'll get you out if you tell me your name." "Never." A laugh, more deranged and crazier than the last. "Then tough luck, fur ball. I'm out. I'm finally out. Yahoo!" Shukaku shouted and raised its head to the sky, feeling absolutely thrilled at the sense of freedom it now obtained. Its attention then turned to the giant toad and the blonde sitting on top of its head as it smiled. Shukaku could sense that karma being sealed within that blonde child, and it laughed with glee. Oh, he was going to love crushing that bug inside to nothing but paste. I'm going to enjoying you. Of all the times I have to be summoned and I have to face a Biju again." Gamabunta ranted as it jumped when the tailed beast swung its mighty tail at the toad chief. Dust and debris scattered and trees uprooted from the sheer force of the beast. It howled in excitement as it stretched its arm made of sand, and Gamabunta ducked while lunging at the beast before jumping up once again before landing on the other side. "And by a stupid kid like you. We haven't even done Sakazuki yet." Annoyed by all the bitching and moaning, Naruto finally snapped. He technically didn't have good relationships with gigantic monsters and summons of terrible destruction. "I'll get you the best damn sake in this planet. We'll be drinking so much that we won't even get to remember the next week. I'll even leave an extra OR too. Just keep that creep from getting anywhere near my village OR, my friends." "Cripes, and I'm supposed to be the brat." Gamabunta landed on the ground, skidding as he did so, causing a shockwave disturbing the nearby foliage. It was then that Shikamaru, Hinata and the rest of the team had heard Gamabunta said in declaration. "Fine then, I accept you as my underling, Uzumaki Naruto." And that was that. Gamabunta once more lunged at the giant tanuki. The Toad Chief stepped aside as it went for its towering knife and gripped it in reverse and sideways as he turned to face Shukaku. The beast extended its remaining arm once more as it raced towards the giant toad and his summoner. The Toad Chief was prepared this time, however, and gripped his knife the same as he would a sword with both hands and winding back as if it was a baseball bat. Gamabunta then pumped chakra as much as he could to the blade and it glowed an ethereal blue as he slashed it at the oncoming sand appendage. The cut was much cleaner this time, and sand seemed to pour down from where the blade made the long cut. Shukaku disengaged that part of the sand and reformed its left hand and raised it high above its head. Shukaku inhaled deeply, air gathering inside it and then smashing its underbelly with its huge right hand while shouting. Futon. Renkuden, wind release. Air drilling bullet. Gamabunta jumped into the air and Naruto could see the wind bullet sailing past below them and exploding in a powerful gust of force that tore through a small mountain and exploding. Shit. Naruto cursed when he saw this and immediately performed the hand seals to his only elemental jutsu, the Tenrin. The winds howled as it encircled Naruto's forearm. Gamabunta landed on the ground and heard the wind howling at the back of his head. That meant that Naruto was up to something. Trusting his subordinate, Gamabunta sheathed the blade at his waist and prepared for a jump once more when Shukaku turned its body back towards the Toad Chief. Gamabunta then performed a single hand seal as he leapt forward, a powerful air bullet came at him. The Toad Chief shouted, Sweden. Tepidama, water release. Gun bullet. Wind and water crashed in on each other, and fell to the earth hard. It felt like a powerful storm all around. Sasuke and Sakura had to brace themselves from the force of the powerful winds trying to throw them away. As Sasuke held on to a branch for dear life, Sakura was pulling him with all her might, clinging to the branches with chakra. This is what a real summon battle feels like. It's like those kaiju movies I used to watch. Sasuke thought. All that environmental destruction around him made him feel rather small. Another question littered in his head as he watched the toad jump into the air once more, only this time, the Shukaku noticed his pattern and gave a feint on the first wind bullet and then looking up and began shooting down at the giant toad in midair. How strong have you gotten, Naruto? Up above in the air, 3 bursts of what sounded like cannons can be heard. Gamabunta was already on it before Naruto could shout, below us. 2 huge globes of water came from Gamabunta, clashing with the air bullet. Wind and water scattered once more and rain began to fall. At this stage, Naruto had suddenly dashed down towards the air space that wind and water crashed on each other. A word was all he needed to know to act. If he knew he could take advantage of something, then he would damn well use it. Besides, the name of the technique was quite an obvious giveaway, was it not? Naruto dived into danger, head first. As he could feel the surge of the strong wind approaching ever closer, he held out his right hand, maxing out the power of the Tenrin spin as the winds howled louder and louder. Then, out of the water dew and the rapid pushing of the wind, the air bullet came at him down below. At an angle both he and Gamabunta couldn't dodge. Naruto didn't care though, he didn't need to. There was something in this technique that made him so sure. As the winds danced around his face he couldn't help but smirk as the bullet hit him full force. Futon. Ura Tenrin Kazuhana, wind release. Heavenly wheel windmill flower reversal. He suddenly found himself slowly descending towards the ground as he was aiming a fist at the Shukaku before punching the air. A straight line of wind emerged from his fist, more like a jet stream as it went straight to Shukaku, who simply jumped back and shouted. Like that will hit me. Boom. The jet stream then hit the ground below and exploded upwards in smoke and debris. With the force of the recoil, Naruto was sent backwards in the air. Fortunately, Gamabunta had caught him there. Nice save. Naruto grinned as he jumped to Gamabunta's head, ditto. This isn't going well. The more time he has out of his container, the more he gets back his powers. We need to put a stop to the Shukaku and wake up the brat. Exactly how are we going to do that? Naruto asked as he tried to fend off Shukaku with another jet stream of wind coming from his fists. Punch the container hard enough to knock him awake. But in order to get close enough, we'd need to stop the Shukaku from moving. So I need something to hold him down with Henge no Jutsu. It'll be like a Kombi Henge combination transformation. Wait, I have a better idea. Naruto suddenly had a plan going through his head. If this works, Gaara would be nothing but a sitting duck and he could end this fight without getting any more destruction done. Inside the village, Jiraiya had just dealt with the remaining snake summons that was terrorizing the village. He could see some of the enemy shinobi retreating when the snakes fell, yet some still had the guts to charge right at him. Gamahiro would simply swat them away like they were mere pests. Jiraiya could feel and hear the earth tremble for a few seconds. He could see the birds from the trees outside the village at the northern side suddenly flocking away. A frown escapes his lips, he knew something was up. Grabbing his telescope, Jiraiya zoomed in on what looked like a silhouette of Gamabunta and the Aikibi squaring off in the distance. Jiraiya suddenly clicked his tongue. There was only one other summoner in Konoha who has a contract with toads. The toad sage jumped from Gamahiro's head and landed on the nearest roof. Gamahiro, I'm leaving this to you. The reinforcements should be arriving any second. I just need to get to the northern gate as soon as possible. With that, Jiraiya disappeared in a plume of smoke. Hold on, kid. Back with Naruto and Gamabunta. Gamabunta thought that Naruto's ploy was downright dangerous, a gambit with no guarantees. It was simple enough, but the problem was the certainty. Sure, no plan ever survives first contact, but this plan sounds a little too risky with what they know. I'm ready, boss, Naruto shouted as he rested comfortably on the Toad Chief's hand. Up on his head, another Naruto was gathering chakra and began thinking of something that involved fangs and claws. You know there's a good chance that you might die from this, right? The blonde at his left hand grinned at him, his jutsu still active and the wind swirling around him. He dug deeper into himself and pulled out the Kyuubi's chakra, causing another sway of the red energy to surround him like a cloak. No chance, because I can make anything possible, that's why. Gamabunta couldn't help but grin at the boy's attitude. It was full of boasts, but somehow, he found himself believing in the boy. One fastball special, coming right up. In an instant, Naruto was traveling near at the speed of sound as he was sent sailing towards Shukaku. Gamabunta was then surrounded in a cloud of smoke and out came a lunging nine-tailed fox that was just as big as Shukaku. Naruto could feel the wind as he rushed through the air like a bullet, or faster than one. He couldn't tell, he could only tell how everything was slightly starting to blur. A fraction of a second later, the Aikibi had just dodged him with a duck. Thinking quickly, Naruto let out 2 sets of jet stream-powered punch above him that changed the trajectory of his course. He had landed, but he was at the upper base of his tail. What the hell? The Shukaku shouted, and soon its own body began to act against this foreign invasion that was beginning to scale at his back, but he couldn't react in time, when a 9-tailed fox slammed onto him with a swish of its long orange tails. Gah! Momentarily distracted, Naruto made a beeline towards the top, ducking, weaving and jumping as any form of sand tried to jump out at him. He'd been successful so far. What with the Shukaku being kept busy by the Kyuubi construct, Shukaku's sand defenses were down, meaning he could scale this monstrosity, get close to Gaara and punch the ever-living daylights out of him. The pseudo-Biju began clawing away at Shukaku, who was cursing up a storm against him. Kurama, you sick bastard. When I get my hands on you, Another volley of wind bullets, but the giant fox was too fast to be hit. Stay still, goddammit. With the enhancements of Tenrin and the Kyuubi's chakra pumping in his system, Naruto had the speed to evenly match against Rock Lee in terms of a sprint. He had managed to every hindrance to him so far and blazingly closed in on Gaara's position at the top of Shukaku's head. A claw overshadowed him, but was stopped when the transformed Toad Chief held the giant claw in place with both of his hands as Naruto jumped, reeled his fist back and aimed at Gaara's face. Wake the hell up. Atop the Chunin exam stadium, Orochimaru had looked at the Sandaime in the eye, his former teacher, mentor, and peer. He could see the older man's tiredness and weary composure. The man was breathing ragged. He looked half dead with those features of his, yet he still stands. I commend your steadfast and stubborn attitude, sensei. Someone who is as old as you still stands against your predecessors. I cannot imagine what it feels like to be in your position right now. Orochimaru sneered as he looked at his old sensei. Hiruzen merely stood there, on guard and ready for whatever attack was to be thrown at him. No, that you can't. You do not understand what it means to be Hokage, Orochimaru. For that, you are not qualified to hold the mantle. Orochimaru gave a small chuckle, amused with his former teacher's assumptions. Who said I even wanted the position, sensei? Do not delude yourself. Sarutobi merely scoffed at the idea. No, Orochimaru, it is you who believes in those false assumptions. I am not one to see and believe falsehoods as my reality. Not me, no, I can tell for a man like me, I deserve nothing great. But you deserve worse. The Shadaime began to move, Hiruzen could only defend. Konoha does not bend to tyrants nor shall it ever serve one. Our will is not meant to fade but grow strong. For someone who thinks that we will simply fall have only themselves to lose against my village. He parried the second Hokage with Enma's staff. The Nadaime retaliated and adjusted his footing to not fall and instead used that momentum to crouch effectively and give the Sandaime a sweeping kick to catch him off balance. The professor simply used Enma as a base and had effectively stopped the Nadaime's progress and kicked his predecessor right in the chest and sending him flying. Though I am Hokage, my fire burns little compared to the one who shall inherit my will. And that one, who will carry it out, will be the person whose will is strongest, whose fire burns brightest. To where Shukaku and Kyuubi were facing off, Naruto had gotten close to the Jinchuriki of the One Tail and delivered a punch that shook heaven and earth itself. To you, Orochimaru, you will fail. For this village, the very shinobi that you've set out to vanquish, they will never fall to the likes of you. Some of them may wither and die, but they will feed the new leaves to fan their flames and become the light that shines upon the village. Orochimaru was growing irate at the old man as he drew Kusanagi and was about to finish off Sarutobi when the old kage performed a jutsu he had never seen before. Now you shall see my will and witness a jutsu that not even you could ever know. Fuinjutsu. Shiki Fujin, Sealing Arts. Dead Demon Consuming Seal. To the old man's back, he saw a deathly white apparition. Beads surrounded its right arm, while a knife remained in its mouth. Its perpetual grin sneered at them as its left hand went for the bound soul that was at its front. Now let us partake in the feast for the Shinigami, my foolish apprentice. Outside the walls of Konoha, Naruto had jumped like he never jumped before as he reeled in his fist back, putting in it all the weight he could muster as he got close to his target. Everything seemed to slow down for him at that moment as he got close to Gaara. He could vividly see his punch flying straight to his target's cheek. He could feel Tenrin powering down after using it so excessively. He could feel and hear his own heartbeat erratically pumping as he slowly got closer and closer. Images of his own childhood flashing before his eyes. From the day that he could remember, he could tell and already experience what it was like having no one around you. He had no guidance, no one to tell him what was right and what was wrong, he had no one to share his sadness. He could sympathize with Gaara because he felt the same pain of having no one, the thought of abandonment, betrayal, and desolation. As his fist sailed towards Gaara, a question formed in his head. Would I have been no different than him if I were in his place? Then, the answer came to him as an epiphany. Yes, it was why Gaara had to be stopped. Smash. Bastard. Naruto cursed. He had indeed managed to wake Gaara up. The boy was confused at the sudden jolt to wakefulness. The Shukaku trashed about before going back to the recesses of his mind. No, no, just when I finally had my freedom. Gaara's world stopped spinning after a few seconds and his vision cleared with Naruto standing before him with his right hand clenched. Naruto was frowning as he once more dashed at Gaara, who made a hand seal to restrain Naruto, who swatted the sand away with Kyuubi's chakra. For the first time in his life, Gaara could feel the emotion that plagued his victims right before a. This is fear. And he felt that fear right now as Naruto walked over to him and deflected any sand that could entrap him. The Kyuubi's chakra guarding him as if it were Gaara's sand, his power simply could not match up to this boy whose titan appeared far more superior to his. When Naruto got within an arm's reach, he quickly grabbed Gaara by the collar and red chakra fluctuated all around him, protecting him from the sand. This madness, Naruto reeled his head back and hit Gaara's own head with his. Smack. Ends now. Then, a silent pause made itself known throughout them. The pseudo-Kyuubi's transformation ended and Gamabunta smirked as the sand construct slowly disintegrated and the red chakra stopped flowing. He had every possible advantage, yet he still chose to end the fight with that headbutt. Not really graceful, but he did everything he could to stop the brat. Uzumaki Naruto, you're one strange little human. I'm looking forward to seeing you grow. With that, Gamabunta dispelled himself and disappeared in a cloud of smoke. Naruto and Gaara were sent crashing on opposite sides due to the force on the forest floor. Both of them could hardly stand up. Naruto stood up first, breathing heavily. He couldn't exactly hide the fatigue that was weighing him down anymore, and by Gaara's disposition, he was tired as well. Even after all that, he could still stand up and not even back down. This guy is unreal, Naruto thought in hidden awe as both of them slowly walked toward each other, fists clenched. This wasn't over. No more chakra. No more tailed beasts. No more jutsu. All this, as it would be nothing more than a brawl. With Shikamaru and Hinata. When Shikamaru saw the sand construct disintegrate, he felt relief wash over him. A breath that he could tell that lasted for several minutes escaped him as the giant monster fight finally ended. Hinata had stepped out. Her face told Shikamaru that she was relieved as well, but concern was still there. He could tell that Hinata was still worried for Naruto. So he told Hinata what the only sensible thing he could do. Can you check for any enemy activity within a 4-kilometer radius, Hinata? The girl nodded and did so with her Byakugan. When she shook her head and reported Shibi and Asuma's whereabouts after retrieving Choji, Kiba and the Sand Kunoichi, he told the young heiress. Then get to Naruto. We need someone who can extract him there. I'll be the one taking watch on our makeshift base. Hinata nodded and began to make her way towards the site where the summoned toad had disappeared from, to where Naruto was most likely in. You were right, Dad. Women are troublesome. He turned back towards his unconscious comrades and then set his sights on his village. He could see smoke and fire, but he could tell that the invasion was most likely over. Somewhere in his gut told him that this would be just the beginning. Someone then made their presence known to him and Shikamaru looked down. He could see Sasuke and Sakura, with the former being carried by the latter who had black marks pasted all over his body. Shikamaru jumped down and eyed the two warily before he asked. So, Care to tell me what the hell just happened back there? Shikamaru asked. Both of Naruto's teammates merely looked down as they tried to erase the thought of Naruto almost being crushed by that freak from Suna. When Naruto had pushed Gaara back, Sakura had to retreat. With Sasuke too exhausted to do any more and her being as useless as she was. It was bloody, too chaotic. Naruto almost died because of me. Sakura answered Shikamaru while Sasuke was gritting his teeth. But he's the one that stood and defeated that freak from the desert, right? How did that happen? Shikamaru asked. Though he already knew the answer, it wouldn't be much to know a little about Naruto's abilities. Sakura couldn't answer as the mere thought brought back something that traumatized her and something that her mind would plastered with for a long time. Sasuke. Shikamaru turned to Sasuke, who just clicked his tongue and turned his head away. Probably ashamed of what had happened to him and ashamed that he couldn't beat Gaara while Naruto matched him blow for blow. Well, if you're not going to answer, then it's fine. But I need you guys inside there while I'll brief you in on what's been happening. Shikamaru said as he pointed to the side of the hollow tree to let Sasuke rest for a moment. Once inside, Shikamaru looked sideways and held his index finger up close to his lip, gesturing for them to remain quiet. Sakura had to wonder. Shikamaru looked vigilant for a moment there. Shibi-san and Asuma-sensei won't be here for another few more minutes, so it's best that I tell you now. Sakura and Sasuke looked at each other, then looked at Shikamaru with a questioning face, and the Nara simply nodded as he looked serious. I don't trust any of the adults right now after what happened. We were sent to this mission way over our heads. This wasn't supposed to happen. That freak from Suna was a Jinchuriki, a rare kind of super soldier that villages have to act as a deterrent for war. Naruto was lucky that he managed to beat that kid down. But that's a whole another story. For now, all I can say is we have to be careful. Sakura looked distraught once more while Sasuke continued to think about what just happened earlier. How strong and how far have you gotten, Naruto? This question lingered in his mind as they retreated when Naruto had pushed Gaara away from them. Sasuke. His thoughts were cut off when Shikamaru looked at him and spoke. What? He asked, his voice filled with annoyance. It's not my place to say this, but it's better you hear this now. Naruto has lived a life full of secrets, lies and loneliness, so don't even try to find reason to be jealous. What you know right now is only half compared to what I got from Asuma-sensei and the others. Naruto got strong in his own way. You should be able to do something on your own too. Sasuke merely clicked his tongue and looked away. Shikamaru didn't know what he was talking about. Shikamaru looked at Sasuke and analyzed him. He knew for a fact that Sasuke wanted power, avenge his family, and subconsciously used Naruto as his measuring stick in their batch. But compared to many of them, Naruto was in a completely different situation compared to them, compared to even Sasuke. That was why he said what he said to the Uchiha. Sakura looked at the two as she finally broke the tension. Shikamaru, what have you learned from Asuma-sensei, anyway? That there's a man in the higher-ups of Konoha who's willing to discard shinobi as pawns, and that someone like you or Naruto are expendable pawns. Sakura had a grim reminder as she thought about this, just like Haku and Zabuza. Thankfully there are people within who can delay him. But if Hokage-sama dies, they could only stall for time until a new Hokage is chosen. But I'm not willing to trust the adults yet after what I learned. Sakura then asked Shikamaru, what did you learn, Shikamaru? Shikamaru was silent for a moment as he looked on the general direction of the village and towards the area where Naruto and Gaara had fallen into a little while ago before he finally answered. When this whole thing blows over, I might tell you. But I recommend having Naruto here to clear things up. I can't be the one to answer your questions. Is Naruto in on this? She asked, but Shikamaru shook his head with a no. Naruto is just a victim here. But everything revolves around him. And it depends on what happens from here on out. So I'm asking you to be patient. If Naruto refuses to answer you, then it's because he either doesn't trust you or he's afraid of what might happen. I hope that you understand my position in this. It wouldn't hurt to ask Naruto anyway, right? Naruto. Every step he made, he felt the earth beneath his feet shatter. His legs shook in pure agony and fatigue. Every single part of his body wanted relief. He was too tired and too empty to go on. Now he was just running on fumes, and his opponent seemed to be under the same condition as well. They were in no condition to battle, yet like possessed men with a mission, both of them continued to fight. Whoever falls down will win, and he wasn't going down first, not until his cold dead body drops to the ground. When they got within range, Naruto and Gaara reeled their fists back at the same exact time. Left and right foot slid up front as both of them came within blowing range, and both were swinging their right fists straight at their faces. Now whoever delivers the first punch would have the advantage. Both of them screamed and swung at their most primal form, and neither seemed to be stopping. Smack! Gaara's world shook anew as Naruto was the first to connect, but the blonde couldn't connect as well, as he was suddenly hit with Gaara's own fist, smashing his mouth and sending him reeling back while he had just punched Gaara's cheek. Recovering at the same time, Gaara was the first to follow through with a punch, but Naruto ducked and reeled his left arm back and swung it upwards, delivering an uppercut on Gaara's abdomen, pushing air out of his lungs, and bowed involuntarily. The redhead had no time to retaliate when Naruto grabbed his shoulders and promptly kneed him to the face. Blood had splattered once more when Naruto broke Gaara's nose. The redhead pushed the blonde away and retaliated in kind when he punched the blonde in the gut, sending him reeling back a few steps as air escaped his lungs and was kicked at the side of his face, sending him flying and hitting a tree on his back. Naruto flinched from the attack as he tried to get up, as Gaara was using his hands holding on to the upper part of his knees for support. Both were breathing heavily, but they tried to fight on. Both of them, so different yet so similar at the same time, and both refused the very notion of defeat. "You will not deny my existence," Gaara shouted as he approached the blonde. Wearily the blonde stood up, his back against a tree, leaning on for support, but he looked at Gaara with an expression that told 1,000 words. "I won't let you, anyone else, even though it was short, they're important to me, so I'm going to stop you any way I can." Images of his friends circled in his mind, and he found himself pushing towards Gaara one more time. His right hand reeled back as he charged at Gaara, now only driven by emotion and the sight of victory within his eyes. With a mighty shout, both Jinchuriki crossed fists for one final time. And only one was hit. Within the final inch, in that small fraction of space and time, Naruto had leaned forward as Gaara's fist brushed to the side of his cheek. Tearing skin and spilling blood, and adrenaline rushed to him one final time as his arm crossed below Gaara's and headed straight towards the back of his chin. Naruto, slowly losing his grip, pushed as hard as he could, as much as he could, and shouted at the very bottom of his lungs as he connected and hoped to end this fight, while Gaara was sent flying and skidding on his back on the ground before rolling and stopping dead in his tracks. Gaara remained motionless, but his consciousness couldn't waver. He looked over to the blonde, who was slowly walking towards him, before falling on his knees and then hitting the ground face first. He watched in fear as Naruto crawled his way towards him, kunai in hand, hell-bent on ending this fight sooner than later. Don't come any closer," Gaara finally shouted as Naruto looked at him, eyes burning with determination and sorrow. "The first time I met someone who truly did understand me, and you turning out the way you did, watching you, I couldn't help but think that I could have turned out the same way because I understood you. I know how much it hurts, with having no one to be there for you, to be so alone that the pain crushes you from the inside." Gaara's eyes widened as he saw Naruto's right eye had a small tear falling. I understand you so well that it hurts. It hurts me just as much. This time, Naruto used his last kunai and pierced the ground with it as he tried to pull himself up. But something happened. I was saved. By the person whose parents were by the Kyuubi. In a story so ironic, he saved me from becoming the same monster as you did, and by now, I have people who I consider more important than anything in this world, and I would give everything just to keep them safe, even if it means finishing you off. Naruto-kun. Hinata had jumped down from the trees and saw her crush down on the ground using his kunai as the only support he has and using it to crawl forward. Gaara had remained motionless as he stared at the blonde. It's over now, you've done enough. No, Hinata shook her head as she kneeled down beside the blonde and grabbed his hands with the kunai with her own. You have to stop, he's beaten, and you had won. He looked over to Gaara, who was simply staring upwards, not unconscious, but extremely tired. She had seen how brutal their fight was with her Byakugan, how primal Naruto and Gaara had been, and how dangerously low both their chakras were. It was a miracle that both of them remained conscious. And she couldn't help but feel sad when she heard Naruto spoke and connected with Gaara the way no one else would. Naruto understood him. The others, are they okay? Naruto asked. Hinata looked on in surprise and slight anger. Why couldn't he think of himself just for once? He almost died today, twice. But her anger quickly dissipated as she saw Asuma and Shibi arriving at the scene, Temari in handcuffs, Choji on Asuma's shoulders along with Kiba and Akamaru not far behind. Shikamaru and Hinata here built a small foothold to gather the injured and give them first aid before they journey back to the hospital. By now, the invasion is dying down and the offspring of the Cage are within Konoha's custody. Temari looked down as she saw Gaara, who was only looking up. Hinata helped Naruto up and slung him on her shoulders. She could hear the blonde mutter, "Thank you, and thank goodness." Hinata blushed at the proximity of her crush, but personal matters aside, Naruto needed all the help that he could get right now. And she will be willing to do so, starting now. Naruto could feel the cold embrace of sleep inviting him, and he gladly obliged to succumb to it. Shibi picked up Gaara, whose head lay low from his overwhelming fatigue. But Gaara had noticed his sister, and a question came to him. Temari, where is Kankuro? Temari looked down while answering her younger brother, he's been captured. Silence between the two of them, and then Gaara spoke, I see. Another pregnant pause, but this time, shorter than the last, I'm sorry, Temari, for everything. Temari couldn't help but be surprised by Gaara's words. Instead, she could only nod at it and looked on at the forest, perhaps awaiting a grim fate. As Naruto slept, within him, he saw himself back at the cage of his prisoner, a grin forming on his face as he looked at the fox. So, Kurama huh?